Hi, everyone. Thank you. How amazing is it to be alive and healthy? Ah, good to be here. So, I'm talking about warp speed drug development. We saw Operation Warp Speed during. Do I have a clicker, by the way? We saw Operation Warp Speed during the COVID pandemic, right? We thought, oh, this is a crisis. We have this new virus, and some people are dying. And we're locked down, and it's important, especially we cannot accept that the elderly are going to be dying, so we need to help them. But wait, there are so many diseases that the elderly especially are dying from, like Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, and so on. And each one of us, we are all infected with a terminal disease called aging. We're all going to get these diseases. So why don't we do warp speed drug development for all diseases, and especially for aging? So I'm Lawrence Ion. I am a co-initiator of a bunch of organizations in DeSci, like VitaDAO, Zuzalu, and Vitalia. Well, Zuzalu is partly DeSci. It's the first pop-up city. And we had a huge component of longevity and DeSci there, but also crypto and AI and so on. First, I would like to try something where this is interactive. Also, I want to be short and then do a lot of questions and back and forth. But first, I want to interact with you and get some feedback. So shout. If something resonates with you, say, dude. All right. If something bores you, shout, boring. All right. And it's something you don't get, just say, I don't get it, man. Great. All right, so health. Everyone says health is the most important thing. But I think it's quite abstract. Most of you young people haven't had any health issues, and it's not something you're present with until you're older. In a way, I'm grateful that I've had a lot of health issues. I have this genetic disease, and I've spent a lot of time in hospitals, had a lot of surgeries all across my childhood, and I know what it feels like to feel frail, and I do not look forward to more of that. So then I'm working very hard on ensuring that that we can be in optimal health as long as we want. And humans coordinate to achieve amazing things, like going to the moon. We should also wake the fuck up and coordinate to cure aging in major projects like this. And we do think that drugs that target aging are the future of medicine. Instead of managing symptoms and keeping people in a poor state of health for longer, we'd rather address the root cause, aging itself, and prevent these diseases and degeneration that inevitably would come naturally. So the good news is that aging has been slowed and reversed in lab animals by dozens of pharmaceutical interventions, by up to 30% so far. And people say, I'm just gonna grow old and die of natural causes. There's always a cause. There's always a disease. This curve goes up exponentially with age. So usually, like let's say, a third of you will die of cancer, a third of you of heart disease, and the rest would pick some other fun stuff here. And everyone will will degenerate, be frail. Sarcopenia comes for all of us, and vision loss and so on. This is not fun. And also, it's economically unsustainable. The current model, where we actually already have more people over 65 than people under 5 in the world. Most people under 5, most kids, are in the developing nations. So you have this huge inverted pyramid, especially in the rich countries, where you have way more elderly people that these kids are going to have to grow up and take care of us when we are going to be old. We have a responsibility to society to do something about this. And also, it's the pyramid is going to collapse, right? The pension system is already not NGMI. So instead of this paradigm, where up to 15% of GDP is used to take care of elderly in asylums and so on, and hospital beds with a lot more suffering, how about we turn that into the reverse, where not only do we not have to pay for the elderly, but they're rejuvenated and they can contribute all their wisdom to our society. And they're healthy and young again, and they can compound their knowledge. Imagine having Einstein and von Neumann and so on living hundreds of years and innovating more and more and compounding on all of that. So we're talking about especially extending the healthy part of life, right? And I do think as long as you keep the disease part away, you can also live much longer. And I don't think there should be any limit to that. And there are a lot of promising approaches, like the damage repair approach, pioneered by Aubrey de Grey and Sense Research Foundation initially, now Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation. Cellular reprogramming, where you turn back the clock on cells, tissue replacement, even whole body replacement, and continuous hormonal rebalancing, and so on. There's a bunch of approaches, and we should look at more as well. As a founding member of VitaDAO, the first DAO to fund real-world research, I know that as a community, thousands of people can coordinate to achieve a scalable way to actually have impact in a mission that we're all aligned on. We funded dozens of projects, deployed millions of dollars, and we had one project ready for clinical trials. But unfortunately, it takes so long to put a drug through humans. It's usually 15 years. And we thought it's faster to build a city and have better regulations, because regulations are the bottleneck here. We need to exit the status quo and not accept what's going on, where we have this invisible graveyard where there's people that are dying every day from what is going on? There's people that are dying every day from diseases that could be cured if we moved faster. 10,000 patients per year just in the US are dying from cancer that would be cured with things that are already in clinical trials, but they just don't have access to it. During the HIV epidemic, there was this drug that the FDA approved 7 years later than Europe and Canada, and said, success, we're saving 10,000 lives a year now with this new drug. Well, you just admitted that by waiting 7 years longer, you killed almost 100,000 people. Why not approve things faster like other countries? Then even things like GLP-1 inhibitors, Ozempic, and so on, that are amazing weight loss drugs, turned out to reduce cardiovascular risk by 20%. And that means about a bit over 1 million lives would be saved every year with this drug. But it was discovered in early 90s, and it was delayed by decades. So that's tens of millions of lives just from this one drug being delayed. We can't say, hey, let's put the speed limit at 4 miles an hour because otherwise people will die. Yes, we recognize there are risks, but we need to find that balance. We can't be unreasonable and be too slow, because then everyone dies. We can't get to the hospital, we can't get food into cities, and so on. We can't have prosperity. And unfortunately, regulators right now are incentivized to think about the false positives. What if you approve a drug and something bad happens? They get bad PR, right? But what if you just kind of wait longer and just ask for more things and more bureaucracy, and it's more expensive, and so on? Well, nobody knows. There's an invisible graveyard that you don't actually know about. Nobody writes in the news about the people that died waiting for medicine. So I do think that we should reform the current FDA and system in general. Maybe 80% of our efforts should be on that. But also, maybe as a hedge, we should put some effort into building a new system, an exit. Imagine if you only had one company, a monoculture like IBM, right? Like the computer company. And if you wanted to create something new like PCs instead of mainframes and business enterprise clients, you had to lobby inside the IBM to create that. No, it's much easier to exit and say, hey, I'm going to start Apple and Microsoft, and then the dinosaurs will either die or adapt. So I do think having a sandbox where we can try a new way and inspiring the world to take what works and learn from these sandboxes makes sense. And as a community, we do have a lot of leverage to create, to govern ourselves, create our own laws and regulations, be able to self-experiment, have that medical freedom. I highly recommend watching Dallas Buyers Club, this movie about the HIV epidemic, where they came together in a sort of OG DAO, a buyers club, where they procured medicine they needed in a faster way. And I do think through movies, we can actually inspire the world, not with these rational arguments that I'm giving you, rather have some movies that show how amazing a world with where people don't age anymore could be. So I also started Jellyfish DAO to create these movies and inspire the world. So my dream is that we can create drugs much faster at warp speed for every disease, and especially focusing on aging, Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, and so on, creating drugs in a few months instead of decades, and spending up to on the order of $1 million instead of billions. And we have created new cities to fix crises with science before, like Los Alamos. So how do you go about creating one? Well, there's this movement, the network state, started by Balaji, where you can create you have this online community that's aligned with around the goal, and then you crowdfund territory around the world, and eventually potentially gain diplomatic recognition to have a new country, a new state. But how do you go from an online community like VitaDAO, for example, where we have that alignment, but we don't have land? You can maybe crowdfund some territory, but then what? How long is it going to take until you get that diplomatic recognition and you're living in person and you can actually create the regulatory environment you want to speed up clinical trials? Well, it might take a long time. So there's this idea of starting with an MVP, right? Going one order of magnitude further in number of people than a co-living space, a hacker house, one order of magnitude further in duration than a conference, and in the middle there would be a pop-up city, where I got involved in Zuzalo with Vitalik to bring together 200 people for 2 months last year in Montenegro as the first experiment pop-up city, to see how it would feel like to live together in an intentional village and explore what could a new city with like-minded people look like. We had healthy food available and exercising together and tracking our biomarkers and all these things. It was amazing to live there, life-changing for a lot of us. So then we created a permanent district called Vitalia in Roatan to focus on longevity, make death optional, and take that into a global network. Now I'm looking for new jurisdictions where we could create this. There are some issues on Roatan, and I'm excited about a bunch of places, including Argentina is on my short list now. That's why I'm here, to see how we could create a special jurisdiction here, bring a new city, a new Dubai, a new Singapore here in Argentina, and be able to innovate, take those regulations, that bureaucracy, that red tape away, and really move fast towards our goals. And I also wanted to give another example. Coming up, one of the biggest pop-up cities, they just raised 150K from Vitalik's money donation to the Zuzalu round. So Zuzalu is now a decentralized movement of these pop-up cities. Aleph also got a little grant from it. So Zeller is going to be in October, from October 5th to November 17th in Berlin. I'll be there. It's focused on longevity and creating a permanent hub in Berlin. There will be some others, Bloom City in LA and Vitalism Bay in SF next year. And also there's one in Lisbon in September called ARC, also focused on longevity. And there's probably over a dozen pop-up cities, mostly on crypto, some on AI, and so on. So I do recommend checking out zozalo.city and seeing those. So I want to go into an interactive session where we talk a bit, but I want to leave you with this idea that you have two options. You can help cure aging, or you can work on another random side project. And with option one, then you can do another one, option two, you're dead. I prefer option one because we can do a lot more random, fun side projects indefinitely. So I would also encourage you to join this new longevity swarm I created, where each and every one of you can do at least something, at least a retweet, a post. We can coordinate as a swarm of bees to do something to increase our chances that we accelerate these things. Also, of course, coming up this week, there are more workshops, interactive longevity workshops at Huerta that I'm facilitating, where we sit in a circle and discuss, go through these things in more depth. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, at these times. I'd love to see you there. Thank you, and let's talk a bit.
Por favor, un aplauso para el chico longevo. Someone has question for Lawrence.
Hi, thank you so much for that inspiring talk. I was wondering what is the vision of basic science in all of this, because at least for neuroscience, which is my field, until we don't understand how the brain works, we won't be able to fix it, right? And that's the reason why all neurodegenerative diseases are still like a mystery, and we've been working on them for decades and nothing is still even learned about it. Like, we don't know why these diseases are coming up in the first place, right? So what is the vision of you guys regarding knowing how things work in order to extend life in a healthy way, right?
I love basic science. I love understanding more and knowing how things work more. And I would just caveat this one thing. We don't always need to fully understand something in order to do something about it. Like with the antibiotics, for example, we just noticed this thing from fungi kills bacteria. We didn't understand fully how they work. We don't understand how aspirin works and a lot of drugs and so on. So there is this idea also with a lot of innovation, a lot of inventions. We're just tinkerers, right? Even with the steam engine or inventing a better steam engine, there's a lot of stories about how they just kind of tinkered and it worked. And then later, scientists sort of figured out the physics behind it and so on. The same thing with, especially in biomedicine. We did invent a lot of drugs many decades ago. It was much faster. The FDA had like a 6 months deadline to approve things. And so we tinkered a lot. People also tried things on themselves, scientists, right? Frontier heroes. But all of that said, I do want more funding for basic research, especially for aging research. It's crazy. We have like 0.002% of our taxes that go to aging research. And I hate that. I would rather live in a society where we are aligned, that this is our top priority, and maybe 50% of our taxes go, or we have a different revenue model. And the thing is that as a community, you benefit from the people being healthy, right? Especially, so governments, for example, right? If people are not gonna be sick, if they prevent that disease, for example, with a vaccine, it's cheaper to give a vaccine for free than to pay for people to be sick. Also, because then they're not productive and they don't increase the economy, right? You don't capture those taxes or whatever you want to do. So as a community, if we live together, we do benefit from funding basic research, because then more innovation is going to come and more revenue to us as a community, also more health for us, and it's just this amazing feedback loop. That's why I'm so excited about creating new cities, new societies where we live together, because all of these things are going to be aligned. And I think that also if we raise more money for translational science, usually companies have a lot of funding and a lot of revenue, they do want to invest in R&D and in basic research as well, because it helps them innovate more. So I do want to see a lot more private funding of basic research. Even as VitaDAO, we fund things from early stage aging research to spin out new companies, longevity biotech companies. And so this translational research. But a percentage of our treasury also goes to just more basic research, things that are more donation, and we hope something will come out of it. It's more like mission driven. So I always see when you have a lot of funding, you have more power to also direct from basic research. It's just really hard to just hope that the government is going to fund more funding, more research into what you want, right? And shout. Yeah, I think it's important to vote, to say your voice and say, hey, fund more. But also, let's also just try a different system. So that's kind of my thinking around it. Yeah.
Okay, just one last comment. Like with bacteria or infectious disease, it's not the same, because the proposal to live longer makes it more likely that we have neurodegenerative diseases, which aging is the main risk factor. So it's no good to have a lot of old people that are all sick with. So, and the brain is really, really complex. So I don't if anyone works in bacteria, please don't be offended. But, so it's different to try drugs for bacteria or viruses than to try drugs for brain, which we don't even know how the thing works. So, but thank you for your answer. It was very good.
No, I do want to understand more, but also I'm saying, hey, let's also tinker and have more of an engineering mindset rather than a scientist mindset to these things. So we create more things and have that feedback loop quicker instead of 10 to 20 years and billions of dollars. Let's also have like a few months feedback loop. And there are, people who are now indeed losing their memories with Alzheimer's and so on. Why not let them try something, right? Instead of another few years of suffering or so on. Maybe they're willing to say, hey, instead of losing my whole identity, I would rather try something, either go now or make it and cure this in advanced science. So I agree, we don't want, so we cannot live longer if our minds are degenerating. Of course, our brain is going to degenerate, and we're still going to die, even though the rest of the body is. So, of course, neurodegenerative disease is one of my key priorities.
GM Lawrence,
Hi.
very nice talk, as always. Yeah, an observation. I was doing a search for my family history back in Brazil, and I was seeing the journals. So, today when we say, like, let's live 200 years, 300 years, it sounds like crazy. But during this search, I came up with a title in a newspaper saying, this old woman, she died in a fire. And it caught my eye, and I went to read, what the subject was. This old woman, back in 1930s, she was 45 years old. So, she was considered an old woman back in 1930s. And this is how the lifespan was. My grandfather, he died age 55 from tuberculosis. There was no tuberculosis medicine, And then, back then, tuberculosis was today's cancer. You say, oh, no, he's going to die from cancer, It was a fate. You caught the bacteria, you ended dead because there was no remedy. So this is an observation, so we just frame ourselves right because, today when you see someone with the 90s and still working, cognitively healthy, it's like a normal days. imagine this guy in the 1930s. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great addition. I imagine we would see people on a alien planet and they would only live like 30, 40 years. And to them, it's like, of course, so why would you want to live longer? You know, life is good and it's good to have an end because you might get bored or you know, it doesn't have meaning if it doesn't end. And we're like, oh my God, such a pity. You're only living for 40 years. But if there was another alien planet where they lived 500 or thousands of years or whatever, they would look with pity to us, right?
Yeah.
And it's this coping mechanism that what we have is what we should have. And actually, it does make sense to accept that which you cannot change, right? All the philosophers so far have said that you know, death is okay and all this stuff because you couldn't change it, and you shouldn't seek the fountain of youth because it always leads to ruin and it's selfish and all this stuff. But the same thing with bacteria, right? So right now, I'm sure if you get a bacterial infection, you want that antibiotic and you're grateful for it. So if only we have these pills to rejuvenate us and keep us healthy, I'm sure everyone will want to take them.
Of course. We are trying to do that with exercises and dieting and a healthy mind as well. So, Lawrence, this was an observation. Thank you very much for discussing with me. I just want to ask you why Brazil, São Paulo, or Rio are not in your even long list of considerations for a pop-up city. So, yeah.
I generally was not including big countries, so Argentina is an exception because of Milei, and you know, this willingness to make a special zone. If I hear from the Brazil leaders, if you can introduce me, that they are interested in this, I'll put it on the long list. No problem. And then if there's more and more engagement, then it's going to be on the short list. And I'm open to talk to governments all over the world. If you can introduce me, anyone, to any governments, that's the top priority. Finding new places where we can create these special jurisdictions, medical innovation zones, bring top healthcare professionals, build a tier 1 hospital, bring billions of dollars in investment, create a new rich mega city there, and you know, share income with the locals and create jobs. And it's an amazing pitch to governments, but mostly small countries, because you can make a huge difference. With big countries you can, but also, you know, maybe if the things are set up properly, yeah, Brazil is I love that. I love Brazil. Thank you.
I also love Brazil. ¿Alguien más tiene una pregunta para Lawrence? ¿Nadie más? Entonces, por favor, un fuerte aplauso para Lawrence. Muchas gracias.